ability to get together and we're both running like chickens with our heads cut off. What I did was I created the notes, and I think you saw that, so that we
Yeah.
can I don't know we've ever done just kind of like, here's the highlight, and then here's questions, and let's just use the questions to guide the conversation.
Let's do it.
It's
Let's do it,
gotta
man.
make
Let's
it
do it.
easy.
I mean, you're wearing the hat today, so it's gonna be
Boom.
ooh shaka laka. I like that you're wearing that, getting ready to head to St. Louis.
That's
That
kind
does
of my
sound
thought.
so good.
My thought is, here we come, St. Louis.
We coming for you. Right after the Cubs just took 3 out of 4 from St. Louis. But here's the deal. Even when the Cubs win, they lose
It's so crazy.
because you won, you're not gonna be in the playoffs. So they're in that funky zone of should they trade, should they add pieces, whatever. They're not
Yeah,
gonna win.
I know. Did you see the man? Did you see the first game that I was watching, the Brewers Braves? Fralick
Mm-mm.
for the Brewers,
Yeah.
bro. He
Yeah.
went he went he went 2 for 3 with a sacrifice fly to score the winning run. So I think he had like they won like 4-3, and I think he had 3 RBIs of the 4.
Nice.
In one inning, he caught 2 balls over his head on a full run over the fence and caught him.
What? What?
It was literally like a human highlight reel. The fans were going berserk. It was hilarious.
Awesome.
Yeah, it
That's
was crazy.
awesome.
It was a great game. Fralick, I think was his name. Like
Fralick.
Frelick. It was amazing.
Yeah, there's some good young players out there right now. Unfortunately, most of them don't play for the Cubs, but
That's what I started to say. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear they're in the farm network of the Cubs.
that's right. They do have some talent. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, they've got some talent. Man, what in the world is it doing here? They do have some talent. It's just,
It's good to see, though. I watched a game the other day, and Schwarber was playing. It's good to see that he's hitting 187 for someone else besides the Cubs.
Absolutely, man. All those guys, Bryant,
I know.
Baez, they're all terrible.
Yeah.
So
It was just a year of chemistry.
yeah, it's just a year of chemistry. All right, so let's get over here. Let's share the group. Man, why is it doing that? I do it here. Pops up that. It's so weird. We'll just go down the line, right?
Yeah.
We'll just go down the line and just hit all the shares. United in prayer. I don't think our nursery and toddler page needs to see it necessarily. What's fish givers? I don't know. I'm not sure who fish givers are, but
Give a
I'm
man a
in there,
fish.
so let's do it. Our best story. I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's Kevin.
Beasley. Oh, is that Beasley? Is it our best story? Oh yeah. Okay.
Stories tell the story.
Right. I'm not. Man, I'm just not on social media much.
Me neither. I'm on a once a week Facebook check.
I like it.
I check Facebook once a week.
How's that working out for you?
I've been able to drop my Prozac and my therapist. Not making fun of people who need those things. It's just,
hey, I think there's something to that, right?
yeah. Hey, Hummel, fish givers, also known as enablers. So crazy.
Oh man, that's right. All right.
Hey, Michael Hanks.
Michael Hanks.
7:23 in the morning out there in beautiful, sunny Ceres, California.
He's probably out there picking some almonds or something right about now, isn't he?
Maybe. drinking. He's probably eating his cereal with some almond milk.
Almond milk. I don't know what the season is for almonds. I'm not sure how that works, but
No, I
not a
don't
lot of
either.
almonds in Ohio.
It's very true. I will say that Stephanie, I have not. I'm almost off of all dairy. I like every now and then. She bought me these these dairy digestive deals that are like for it's like dairy and gluten and whatever. It's like it's a step up from like lactate I used to take. Lactate doesn't even help me anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
it keeps the stomach ache and all that away, but I
Yeah.
get hives. So like I don't do milk, cheese. I can't do
Mm.
any dairy. And so she got me this. It's almond milk and oat milk combined, and it has a really good consistency. Oat milk is a little thick for me, and almond milk is a little watery. But the two of them combined is actually in your cereal is actually super duper good.
That's awesome,
So
man.
it's my new
That's awesome.
go-to.
I don't really do dairy hardly at all. I mean, really
It's
almost
smart.
not at all.
Well,
So
here's the deal. Here's the deal. No mammal does after they're weaned except dumb humans. I mean, we should look at all mammals across the board and say, milk is for a certain stage in your life.
yeah, it is true. I'm down 5 pounds and I've cut a lot of sweets and all that kind of stuff out. But man, bro, you got to admit, chocolate chip cookie and a glass of milk before you go to bed just makes you sleep a lot better.
Bro,
You know I'm telling the truth.
bro, here's the deal. But I know, but you're talking to somebody who hates milk. Like, I hate
It
chocolate milk.
ruins.
Here's how bad it is. I hate chocolate milk. You and ranch.
You might not be American,
I know. Well, but you don't like ranch.
communist. Ranch is overrated.
So is chocolate milk.
Jim Gaffigan says ranch is made from buttermilk and sadness.
Oh, chocolate milk's made from dirty cows.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. All right, you ready to go live?
Let's
We
go.
were a
live.
little late. Hank said trees are ready to be harvested. See, we were in line. We knew what we were talking about. Oh, Anthony Richard,
That's
Tony
true.
Richard, yoo-hoo, bro.
That is true.
I'm not even really sure what that
I don't know
is.
what it is,
It's not dairy, bro.
but it's better than
It's
chocolate milk.
it's dirty water is what yoo-hoo is.
You know what?
I
Yoo-hoo.
love a yoo-hoo.
You know what I was thinking was, how like sometimes these places in the East, they used to put their factories on the edge of a river. And I'm just wondering if there was a dairy that put their factory on the edge of a river and somebody went down there and scooped up some of the river water and said, this kind of tastes like chocolate milk.
Yeah, it's close.
It's a
It's close.
byproduct of river water and chocolate milk. Yoo-hoo.
I love it. I love it. All right, we're running a little bit behind. You had some van issues this morning, so we'll make up for. We'll redeem the time. That's what we're here for.
Oh,
Danny Aruda, coffee milk.
wait, what?
What's coffee milk?
Bro, on the East Coast, we have coffee milk.
Oh man, bro.
What?
Jeffrey Glick, Farm Fresh, bro. Farm Fresh chocolate milk. Listen, there was nothing better. Every day when we went to work for the rec center, every day we'd stop at Farm Fresh and get a chocolate milk and a cherry Danish. Every day, bro.
Oh my
The breakfast
Lord.
of champs.
I can't believe you didn't say chocolate milk and chocolate covered donuts.
Well, that was, I had the bag of those in my closet at home. So
The kind that has the roll up top with the little clasps.
yes.
Absolutely, dude.
No doubt. No doubt.
Bought at Farm Fresh.
This conversation could be awesome. We should be doing this live, man. This
I know.
would be a great conversation.
Jeff Glick, my question is, back in the day, did you drink your Farm Fresh chocolate milk from a glass bottle?
Ooh, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. We need a little more information from Aruda on coffee milk. So Aruda, hook us up with what that means. I'm not really sure what that even means. So we need some clarification on that. All right, let's get started. We can bring this. Yeah, glass only.
Yeah,
that's the way to go, right there, bro.
That's it, man.
They used to have the big, like the big glass
Yeah.
deals. Oh man, so good.
Yeah, they weighed
So good.
32 pounds,
It's awesome.
half a pound an ounce.
That's right. That's right. All right, here we go. We're gonna go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham, alongside my big brother Ken Dillingham Jr. the third, sporting the Chicago Cubs. Sporting the hat, bro. I'm loving that today. That's a good look, man.
I can't take it off. I can't take it off for a couple of reasons. I got my headphones on.
Yeah.
And my hair looks like the professor on Back to the Future.
I feel like that's a shot at bald guys. That's kind of rude, bro.
No, I'm saying no. Yeah. I would prefer to be bald than to have the hair I've had lately. But here's the deal.
No, you wouldn't.
No.
Trust me on that. No, you would not.
All right. Yeah, it's got, but I have, they had Pastor D embroidered in the back. So
nice.
It's personalized. Yeah.
Look at you go, bro.
Pretty sweet.
That's
and
awesome, man.
Today you could call me chocolate milkless KGD Trey.
We've had an interesting pre-show conversation. I don't know. I don't know, Ken. Our listeners are pretty smart. I don't know if they're up to speed with Yoo-hoos.
I wonder who. I would like to take a poll today. Those that are on, that are online watching and tuning into the live recording. I want to know how many have actually had a Yoo-hoo.
How many have had a Yoo-hoo? We need to know that. Inquiring minds want to know, bro. Who's had a Yoo-hoo, and even narrow it down even a little bit more. Our buddy Jeffrey Glick out in California brought up farm fresh chocolate milk out of the bottle.
Out of the glass bottle.
Glass bottle back in the day. Goodness gracious. I don't even like milk, and it's amazing. So, yeah, we've gone down the list. I don't know. We've heard all kinds of stuff. Coffee milk.
Look at this, bro. So Ken Bistarkey said no, he's never had one. But look at this: Anthony Richard, Eric Mailman,
Hanks, Michael.
Is Eric a mailman or okay? So Eric.
Well, they say your last name comes from what you do, so clearly they've had
like Brad Carpenter,
right?
Yeah. Look here, Jared Staten, Michael Hanks, been years. Man, we've got a lot of people that had Yoo-hoos.
I think we need to make today Yoo-hoo Day. Everybody should go out and get a Yoo-hoo.
If we make a really good point today, just exclaim, Yoo-hoo!
That's so awesome, man.
John Hummel, for real. Yoo-hoo's chocolate water.
That's right. Today's episode is brought to you by Yoo-hoo. What is it? Isn't that their thing? Yoo-hoo.
I think.
That's awesome. It should be if it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's been an interesting pre-show. It's been an interesting morning. We saw our students off today. They're on their way to St. Louis right now. NAYC is getting ready to happen. And we experienced some van trouble yesterday, getting everything prepared. You had van trouble this morning, getting ready to go. So
yeah, they were getting one of our vans. They were getting ready to. They were checking them out yesterday and whatever, and they're like, "We have a van that doesn't have AC." And
that's a problem when you're going to St. Louis. And
Chris, you were just talking about what was it, our last podcast or whatever, when you were talking about we were in St. Louis, it was like 103 and people are like, he's exaggerating. No, it's going to be 100, 101, 102, 100 Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
With 100% humidity, it's going to feel like 148 every day. Like that might be a bit of exaggeration.
That's what. Well, the thing is, I don't know. I mean, it might, especially if you're a young person in a suit on your way to an NAYC service in a van with no. I'm like,
man, do you remember Oklahoma City, bro?
Free deodorant, bro, for everybody.
Were you were there, right? Oklahoma City.
That was the NAYC from hell.
It felt like it. They made them stand outside.
It was
at 4:00 in the afternoon. It was 110 degrees outside. Man, it was miserable.
The doors will open in a minute, people.
Is that your Oklahoma City accent?
How do you say that? Is definitely not. That's a Rhode Island coffee milk.
That's exactly right. I'm not.
How would you say it? No, Oklahoma. The door's open in a minute,
Man,
people.
there you go. That's pretty good. You lived in Texas for a while. You should know that,
Texas
bro.
is a different accent.
It is a different accent, slower.
Yeah.
Got a little slower deal. So, yeah, so we're excited about NAYC, and we could have a conversation about that, but we won't. We're excited. Our students get to go worship with 30,000 of their closest friends. I mean,
I'm excited for them.
exactly, and I'm excited. I don't know if, bro, we got to hit up a little Sugar Fire.
Oh,
A Sugar Fire barbecue.
We're going. You and I.
Let's do it.
We're going.
Maybe we should have a Dillingham Group Mobilized Church Podcast Network meeting at Sugar Fire.
Dude, you know what? Hey, by the way, you know what Stephanie said? She said, for those of you that are listening, Stephanie is the Mrs. Dillingham of Dayton.
The Mrs. Dillingham Jr. the third.
Yes. She said, hey, do you want me to get a reservation at General Conference for a restaurant, for a meet and eat for the Dillingham Group?
Yeah.
The Mobilized Church Network. And what we need to do is we need to say, so we're going to meet Nathaniel Rios at NAYC. And what we need to do is we need to say, okay, here's your test, bro. Here's your test. We'll meet you at Sugar Fire Friday at 2.
Yeah.
And we just put it out there. And he's like, I didn't get the message. And we're like, well, then you weren't listening to the podcast, which means
you can't be part of the network.
You did not pass the test.
I like it. I'm going to ask how it compares to City Barbecue. We have loyalty. I mean, it's hard to compare. It's a little bit different. Sugar Fire can be a little hit or miss sometimes, but it's good barbecue. They got good sauces.
They do have stuff. They actually, I would actually say that they probably have, besides the City Original, maybe better sauces.
Yeah, City Original with the splash of their what's it called? Fire or something? Brush fire. That's where it's at. Get a little heat, but you get the flavor of the original, which I think their original barbecue flavor is as good as any barbecue sauce.
Sometimes I'll throw a little swine wine in it.
Ooh, there you go.
You put that little swine wine in there, and it gives it just a little bit of that vinegary tartness that sometimes it lacks.
Okay, I'm gonna throw you a curveball. I think their best barbecue sauce they've ever had. You ready?
Oh boy,
peach habanero.
Bro, that was good.
It sounds horrific. It absolutely delicious.
Very good. That was
peach
very good.
Habanero.
That's very good.
And Hummel brings up City has the best ranch. That is true. That is true.
Because they don't have ranch. Oh no, they do.
No, they
and
do.
And you know what?
My wife actually got the recipe from them, bro. She actually got the recipe. They gave it to her. Again, I just want to reiterate. I think, in the words of Jim Gaffigan, you ranch people need to calm down. It's not that good. And I mentioned on the pre-show, my favorite line is, ranch is made from buttermilk and sadness, bro. That's what it's just like, come on, man. It's not that good.
I
just want to make everybody mad.
That's how I feel about milk and chocolate milk.
It all comes back. Comes back to chocolate milk.
Well, here's the deal. It all comes back to dairy-based.
There it is.
Stuff, which we decided in the pre-show, we decided that humans have not learned from every mammal species on the planet that you stop drinking milk when you're weaned.
Yeah.
The Bible says that when you should be eating meat, you have need for milk again. That was a rebuke.
Yeah.
So people that are milk drinkers they're just continuing to revert back to infancy.
Although I just saw this is funny. I just saw John Hummel's comment, dirty cows, though, and then he said heresy, but what I read was
Hershey.
I read Hershey.
Me too. Me too, bro. I was in Hershey when I read Hershey. I knew it when you said that. You said what I read, and I'm like, I did too.
So awesome.
It's the gift, man.
Milk
it's the gift. ADD is a gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's evidenced by the fact that we're 19 minutes and 45 seconds into the podcast. I have no idea when we started. Did we do 3, 2, 1 countdown?
We did do that. I don't know at what point it was. that we did that, but we did. So let's go. We just flow seamlessly right in the conversation, and we're
And by
gonna
the
have
way,
just as much
this is
fun.
good. This is good and super deep today.
With the chocolate milk conversation or what?
No, what we're going to talk about.
Oh man, this is awesome. All right, so today we're not going to talk about milky drinks and milk coffee and
Right.
Yahoo Yoo-hoo stuff and whatever. What we are going to talk
You
about
got a
is
buddy, by the way, in Jared Staten who said ranch is milky MSG.
attaboy. That's what I'm talking about. Dadgum right, man. Stuff is disgusting. Although, just keep this on the down low. Recently, I've kind of gotten into like chicken wraps
Oh, from
and
Chick-fil-A.
and a little bit of ranch in there. It's not bad. It's edible. Like I don't just spit it out immediately. It's edible,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But we won't. Don't tell anybody I said that.
Speaking of edible, the most over exaggerated marketing slogan, the incredible edible egg. The fact that you have to prove that it's edible does not make it incredible.
Bro.
It's like a dichotomy of
Hate.
concepts.
But
Incredible,
gross.
edible. It's, hey guys, it's incredible and it's edible.
If you have to tell people that,
You have to,
that's a problem.
and
like you-
people's knows this.
that's right. That's what you say to somebody when they're about to eat like a poisonous berry or a non-poison. No, that's edible.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah. Is this good to eat? I think so.
I think so. I'm with you, bro. I'm 100%. I think
Uh-oh. Hanks, you've
about to,
crossed
about
the
to,
line.
about to throw down, huh? About
He's
to throw
like,
down.
I'm done, man. I'll tell you, listen, but here's the deal. Bacon redeems it all.
Throw bacon and some milk.
If I would dip bacon in milk. People are talking about Oreos and all that in milk.
That's right.
Like, I don't even do any of that. Like, people are like,
That's right.
oh, Oreos, chocolate chips and milk. You mentioned earlier, Anthony Richards said Oreos and milk. I'm like, I said, I can't do any of that.
Yeah.
But I would dip bacon in milk and eat a hard boiled egg.
Bacon is one of the few things that I don't think is overrated. I think it's properly rated.
Bacon,
Bro, properly rated.
Bacon is the filet mignon of blue collar people.
And that's exactly right. The beautiful thing about bacon is I could eat a pound of it and not even be full.
True. And
Just
not gain
keep on-
weight. That's the
just
good thing.
keep on. Just
If
keep
you
on
eat
pounding
if
that
you eat a
stuff.
pound of donuts, here's the deal. If you eat a pound of donuts, you
Which
will
I
gain
have.
5 pounds. If you eat a pound of bacon, you'll lose 5 pounds.
It's a beautiful thing,
It's
right?
beautiful. It's keto.
That's right. Keto. All right. So today what we're going to talk about is, we talk a lot on here about creating a multiplication movement, all that kind of stuff. How to build a culture, disciple making culture that leads to multiplication. Bro, do you see the seamless segue? Like we went from bacon straight into it and just right into it.
You're a trained professional.
So what we're talking about today is we're going to talk about the difference, and I'm going to let you kind of just handle this, but there's a lot of there are a lot of conversations happening around discipleship, disciple making, all that kind of stuff. There are a lot of different concepts and ideas on what discipleship looks like, what disciple making, multiplication, all that stuff looks like. So today we want to talk about is the difference between models, methods, and movements. So why don't you set that up for us? We'll just launch into it. We'll just go from there.
All right. So let me just run over what we're talking about, kind of defining the terms. So in relationship to this conversation, and so we'll put them in context. So when we're talking about models, we're talking about things that are, there's usually models are built from two primary things. One is a solution to a problem. In other words, man, let's sit down and figure out a way to fix that. Or secondly, an observation of success. In other words, that worked.
Yeah.
I mean, so usually models are built off of man, we got a problem, we got to fix that. And so it's a desire to fix a problem, or it's something that, we've realized, man, we implemented that and it really worked. And this is probably models that become kind of programmatic, but essentially models focus on trying to help people produce a desired outcome based on a strategic action. In other words,
Right.
they be programs, that have the ability to kind of plug and play people into a system that's intended to help people do something with which they might not be familiar. So like if you have a model, basically what you can do is you can it's kind of like I like to think of it as sort of almost like uh, like going to a not a conveyor belt. What's the word? An assembly line where, like a car that's built on an assembly line, the model that they have, the system that they have, basically says you need to be able to know and become an expert on this sliver. You do this, and if everybody else does their sliver properly, then the end result's going to be amazing. And so it's, I think that's something to be thought to be remembered as we talk about this, that models are often kind of, they plug and play people into the system intended to help them do something with which they may not initially be familiar. And it's often referred to by churches because it's faster and easier. In other words,
Right.
we can implement a model. Here's the model, and we need X number of people to do this, and we need X number of people to do this, and then we do a little training and we get people up to speed. And even though principles are often at the core, the real focus is on participation, right? We need to get everybody involved. So now the downside to it is it often doesn't produce the results unless it's constantly fueled and focused on by leaders, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not a self-perpetuating deal, and it usually doesn't change the culture. It simply changes behavior.
Yeah.
Okay. The second thing is methods. Methods are more organic forms of models. Some people like to say, methods are like subsets of models, but sometimes I think methods are a little bit more organic. They're often systematic approaches to walk people through kind of how to grasp and understand core principles. So unlike models, methods are a little more focused on the principles. They're a little more focused on, methods usually cause people to be a little bit more familiarized with why we're doing this. Models, you can just tell somebody,
Yes.
just do that.
Yes.
Where methods are like, we do this because, and so it's intended to help people do things in correlation or association to core principles. So I think it's a layer closer to the desired. The downside of it is if the values aren't changed in the hearts of people or at the corporate level, then the scorecard's still the thing that wins the day. So, for example, you could have methods, you could institute methods, and church growth can become the end game, or it can stay the end game. And so methods simply become better ways, and sometimes even more biblical ways to reach new members, which isn't really, the biblical model. Finally, movements. Movements are both the most effective and the most difficult to achieve, I believe.
Right.
So the core of movements is a passion for a cause that prompts people in the movement to become the answer. I think that's something we really need to wrap our brain around, right?
Yeah.
So like, what is the core essence of a movement? Like when you say we need movements,
yeah,
right? It's that the people in the movement become the answer. So this requires core shifts in both values and the desired outcome. In other words, it shifts the way it shifts what we value, but it also shifts what we're wanting to produce. And I think the beauty is that the longevity of movements is fueled by culture. And we understand that kingdom culture can only be produced by the transformation of Jesus. So now here's the deal. The downside is that movements that if they're birthed only out of excitement or enthusiasm, as opposed to the result of true culture,
Yeah.
They usually are highly focused on people principles, but sometimes they become ineffective in their lack of processes. In other words, see, culture will, like you've said it many times. Culture eats programs for breakfast. It's so what happens is culture does what is needed because it's embedded in what the people are.
Yeah.
But 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 sometimes you can have a movement that is very organic and it's very grassroots, but it's built off of excitement and enthusiasm. And then all of a sudden people are like, when there's opposition or where it doesn't work as fast as they thought it would, or it's harder than they thought it would be, sometimes it really starts losing momentum because it's not really part of their culture. It's just something people got on board with because they were excited.
Man, there's a lot to unpack there, and we wanna kinda just, kind of systematically do something a little different than we normally do
Yeah,
and just kinda answer some questions. But, as you were talking there, I was thinking about models, and I was thinking about this, Ken, like, you talked about, like, you plug and play people into a system. And they may not be familiar with it or whatever, but even like leaders, sometimes you plug leaders into a position, not because they're the most disciplable or spiritual or
right.
whatever, but sometimes it's because they're good at something and
The
you find a
gifted
way to,
ones.
yeah, you use the gifted ones. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about how potentially did the Industrial Revolution.
I was thinking about the same thing, bro.
Are you serious?
100%.
As you're
100%.
talking,
Eli Whitney and interchangeable parts, and
you become a cog in the machine. And
it
so
goes does it goes right back to what we talk about when we talk about a tractional model and the machine, and you just do your piece and you do your piece with excellence, and the whole thing will create some.
And so many of our programmatic thinking are really models that are basically, like you said, the from the industrial revolution mindset, right? The
100%.
cog in the machine. Um, so I think it's important that we kind of understand that culture does affect us. We see it in church structure. We see it in a lot of places. And the reality is, here's the frustrating thing. We're addicted to models, and models do provide some level of comfort because there's structure to it. It's familiar, like what to expect, what's gonna happen,
Mm,
right?
so
So
true.
so in a world of chaos and even a spiritual world
Oh,
where things are in trouble and you got a lot of things going on around you and it's a fight and all that kind of stuff, man, sometimes people they lean into that because it's kind of the only familiar thing, which is a
so good.
discipleship conversation.
So good. So what you're saying is that what you're saying is sometimes we have a tendency to default to models because they're highly predictable and easily controllable.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly, and
So
we and
good, man.
and we would prefer that over the unknown, right?
Right.
Most people would prefer the predictable outcomes versus we don't know how this is gonna turn out, especially when as leaders, as ministry leaders, when you have set before you the model and example that success looks like megachurch or,
Mm,
you know,
Come on,
you
bro.
whatever celebrity personality you think, um, if that becomes the model for what success is, then that's what you put all of your energy and effort towards, and you try to get that predictable outcome. But the big problem is it is inherently limited. It
Mm.
minimizes the potential of the grassroots movement, right?
It's not flexible. It's not. It's not flexible. It's not scalable. It's not. It's not. When I say flexible, I mean it's not. It's not dynamic to changing. That's why so many times, Chris, sort of attractional model churches are always kind of behind the relevancy curve
Correct. Correct.
because they're always
Absolutely.
responding to the latest Barna report or whatever. So let me ask you this question as it relates to this. I- on what you just said,
Yeah.
um, if so, okay. So what you're saying is models are sometimes preferable, often preferable, because we can train up a person, we can give them a very specified job,
Yeah.
we can give them the departmental manual, the scope of expectations,
Yeah.
and basically say it's going to be really hard for people to really mess this up. And even if they do, it's just a little sliver of it. We can, but Jesus, so here's the deal. Have you ever considered, like, Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom?
Yeah.
And Peter basically, from that moment, spirals. I mean,
True.
I mean,
Absolutely.
like Jesus commits. Jesus doesn't eliminate the human factor. In fact, Jesus commits the future of the church into fallibility.
Right. Right.
So what are you scared of? Jesus wasn't scared. What are you scared of?
Man,
That's what I asked myself.
Bro, I think that really is so good. What's driving that? I think it is fear. So that's why I brought up the success thing of, like, the fear of failure. If I don't produce mega church status, if I don't reach a certain, attendance number or whatever, then I'm not successful.
Oh.
Versus, it's the in investing, they talk about what's your risk tolerance. You reach
Mhm.
different ages, and at
Mhm.
different ages you have risk tolerance. When I was young, I just started in the workforce, and in 1998, man, I lost a ton of money because I had everything in super aggressive
Mhm.
401k investments, and it was super aggressive. So I lost a ton, but I also gained it right back pretty quickly.
Exactly.
Right? Why? Because I had a high risk tolerance. I got
You can always
plenty of
make more money.
time.
You
I
can
got plenty of time. I'm young and whatever. And so what is your risk tolerance? I think sometimes pastors and leaders tolerance to dwindle, and we start operating out of fear.
Mm.
And instead of looking at the potential of what could be released when we release the power, the human power, which is what Jesus invested in, right? Like you said, the
Mhm.
fallibility. He took into account fallibility and still invested in Peter to be, to launch a movement that was going to turn the world upside down. I think sometimes what we do is we go to the other side and say, well, I don't really the guy who buried his talent in the ground. I didn't want to
Mm.
lose it. I know that you're a hard taskmaster. I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want it to. What would happen if God liberated us from the fear of comparison?
Mm.
What if God liberated us as leaders
From the
from
scarcity mindset.
the scarcity mindset, the fear of comparison, that if we stop looking at guys, we've got some guys on the West Coast, you know, Jeffrey Glick we've talked about,
Michael
in the
Hanks area.
San Francisco area, Michael Hanks. We got people that are digging out churches in difficult, challenging areas, and our measurement doesn't take into account all the things that are being done. And just because
Mhm.
it doesn't measure what we have on the scorecard doesn't mean that there's not success there. What if we could just unleash the potential,
Mhm.
right? Just unleash the potential of the human resources that God has given to us instead of trying to play it safe. Models, in my opinion, models are the play it safe approach,
They are.
right?
I think they're both the play it safe and people who don't. Oh, be careful. I think it's play it safe and probably a little bit of trying to go the easy route of something that's predictably reproducible.
Man, so good. I believe that. Michael Hanks talks about models that work in places, and so we crave that success, right?
Yeah.
It's exactly what you're saying. Take the easy approach
Yeah.
versus find out what God's doing in my area. The principles apply in my context. How
Yeah.
do I dig it out for myself?
Okay, so you said, all right, so let me start and ask this first question. So today we're just going to walk through some questions, and they're questions that have been proposed to us through the years. These are
Yeah.
questions that have been proposed, and we sort of consolidated them and put them together into some questions today that fit into the context of this conversation. You just you just mentioned that people's risk tolerance is in direct proportion to their pisteuo faith perspective.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So a person's risk tolerance is based on how much they're pisteuo. They're all in. They're like,
Right.
God's got this. And so,
Yeah.
whatever. If if a person's risk tolerance is high, they have a high risk tolerance because they have a high faith foundation. They're like, look, I want to see God. I want to see God's will done. He's not willing that any should perish. I don't care. I don't care what anybody thinks about what I'm doing. I
I
don't
would
care.
say I would say high risk tolerance and high pain tolerance.
Yeah. Well, but isn't your pain tolerance built off of this ability to recognize that I'm just stewarding God's thing anyway? It's like
Absolutely.
it's not my image. It's not
Right.
my legacy. It's
Yeah.
not Jesus said I would build my church. He pretty much said, so question 1. Do you believe that most church leaders really do want a missional movement at the core, or is it something that's not? Is it do they want just I want what they have? I want
I do believe most leaders want the results of the missional movement.
uh-huh.
I do believe most leaders want to see, a revival that shakes their city,
Mhm.
or
They want to see people
their area. They
saved.
want to see people saved. They genuinely, I think they genuinely do have a desire to see the results of it.
Mhm.
What kind of this conversation? I
Mhm.
don't know that most have. I'm not. I shouldn't say most. I'm saying. Well, I'll say most because if it wasn't most, we would have more missional movements among us,
Mhm.
and even like outside of our organization,
Yeah,
it's an exception. So this is
it's
not a slight or a slam.
no.
I think the way that the scorecard has been shaped for us over the last 40 years
Mhm.
has kind of altered our view of success and whatever.
Yeah,
And so I think what's happening is I do think that there is a spirit-led move that's taking place right now
totally agree.
where leaders and pastors are saying, God is capable of more than what we're currently seeing right now. Not attendance numbers, not how many people are coming to church. God is capable of more transformation, deliverance, miracles, all of that kind of. God is capable of more than what we're currently seeing.
Mhm.
And there's a hunger and awareness like we need to figure this out. We need to find out what are we missing, because it's the same message that the apostles preached. It's the same power of the Holy Ghost that was available to them is available to us. All of those things. Yes, there's some cultural things, but when you look at the ministry of Paul, he went into crazy cultures. Ephesus was nuts. Corinth was crazy, and had amazing revivals. So I do think there's awareness among leaders saying, look, God is capable of doing more. What do we need to do? And here's where I think, Ken, what you're talking about there,
Mhm.
I do think that there is a willingness to get your butt kicked more and to make the
Yeah,
hard choices and the difficult decisions
yeah.
that are required to experience a missional movement.
I think there are generations to harken back to our original portion of our conversation. I think a lot of pastors are tired of milk toast churches. Milk toast.
You worked it in. See,
I get
it's even
extra
a
credit.
derogatory term.
Do I get it?
They use
Yeah.
milk to make it a derogatory term.
Do I get extra credit? So anyway, Jeff Glicken, I like what he said. He said the willingness to suffer, which is pain tolerance, is always a crucial component of authentically apostolic movements, and that's true because Jesus said, don't think it strange,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so okay, so all right, so here's what I often see, and I'll lead this into like another question. Way to go, Hanks. Exactly, he says.
Exactly.
And
Nicely
so
done.
this is why I love doing a live
I
recording of
do
the
too,
podcast.
man. I do. It's awesome so
It's the
much.
secret sauce in it, man.
It
It's pretty
is.
cool. So question 2, so I'm gonna wrap this up with not wrap up the conversation, but wrap this into. I'm gonna
Yeah.
intertwine. So, all right. So there is an increasing number of leaders that are saying, God have mercy, this cannot be all There is to it. Like this can't be all the people in my community that want to be saved. This
Yeah,
can't.
right.
And so, but because of the fact that we've been so inclined to look for the next model or even the new methods, like for example, okay, so I think you go to a conference or you go somewhere and you listen to somebody preach and they're kind of preaching and proposing this model. I've also heard people kind of say they like reinforce methods, like
Mhm.
like we
Yeah,
would reach our world if we would just get our people out there teaching Bible studies.
yeah, and
That's a that's a
I've heard
method,
people like methods do methods can change,
right?
right? Message doesn't, but methods can
Right.
change, yeah.
So the question then is, if leaders, and I believe they are, right, are moving towards wanting to say, I'm just not satisfied. I'm just not satisfied with the reality that this is all there is. That this is all God can do. This is all God can do through us. This is all the people in this community that wants to be saved. And so they're looking for models, but the question is that needs to be asked is, do models and methods produce movements? And if not, what does?
I would say models don't possess the ability to they're in my opinion, models are sterile
Mhm. Right.
because it is something that has been created and cultivated and developed in a certain context, and here you go do this and whatever.
Yes.
It's
It's do versus be.
correct. It's do versus be, which what you said at the beginning when you set it up, I think was perfect about about people can do those they can do that function or that role, they can play that role in the machine, but it's not in them, and this is where at some point for most people, and this is anybody that has an attraction model church, you've experienced this with like volunteerism and whatever.
Mhm.
At some point, people get disgruntled and
Mhm.
we've had van ministry before and try to do van ministry, go pick people up and whatever. It's a hard ministry, man. You
Very
get
hard.
to church at 8 in the morning, you don't get home till 2, 3 in the afternoon. You're picking people up. Sometimes they're not as grateful and whatever.
Mhm.
And what
And
we
then people
found was
begin to say, Isn't there anybody else in this church that cares about can't we get
correct.
some help here?"
Can we get some help? Why won't anybody do
Yeah.
this? And even people that have a burden for it, sometimes it becomes very frustrating until they just get totally and completely burnt out. I think burnout is the byproduct of
Mm.
playing a role or being a cog in the machine versus being, right? The missing piece of models is the vitality that comes from doing what we feel fulfilled in doing,
Mm.
right? Well, I'm supposed to do there's a need in children's ministry, so I'm gonna go be in children's ministry, or there's a need in nursery, so I'm gonna go do nursery ministry versus the place where vitality comes, which is impacting lives and whatever. The second piece of methods, I do think that there are components of methods because it's typically principle based that can definitely can definitely help lead towards and facilitate,
Mhm. Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
a movement. It I think methods can kind of teeter on that line.
See, this is what here's what let me throw this out at you. Okay. Let me nuance what you're saying here and see
Yeah,
if I can add a little bit of like salt and pepper on it.
yeah,
Okay. So I think what you're saying, what you're teetering on here is to say methods could methods could be just do,
yeah,
but methods also, because of the fact that they require a little bit more awareness and acquaintance with the core principles and what we're trying to do. Like you in a model, you don't have to really know, like for example, in a model, man, you could have parking lot attendants and say, what we're going to do is we're going to make people enjoy the experience. They're going to come to our church and bless God. We're going to get new golf carts, and we're going to get, and all what you do, just smile, get out there and smile, shake their hands, get them on the golf carts, bring them to the front door,
yeah,
drop them off. whatever. And that person, they may be like, I serve a very important role. but in methods have a tendency, at least in my mind, they are no, not have, they have the potential
Yeah.
of causing a person to over time capture the root core
Yeah.
of, so that they can start moving away from doing and becoming over time.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely, and yeah, so I think methods, you could swing one way or the other, right? If you lean more into the doing piece of the method, then you just kind of that becomes your model.
That's it.
If the principle gets a hold of you and it becomes who you are, now you can swing into a movement, and actually, I think methods what methods can do, it can be a help and a resource for movements to provide just enough structure not to manage it, but to
So true.
facilitate it.
So true. To get people, it's like an on-ramp to movements. To get
Correct.
to get people to know, like, here, because here's the thing. I think sometimes as people, because becoming isn't an instantaneous thing.
Absolutely.
Like somebody doesn't,
100%.
right? Somebody doesn't just become, because there's knowledge associated with that. There's wisdom associated with that. There's understanding the core principles and concepts that aren't, you can't just download those like a software update. It's
Bro,
you
I was
s
just in Chick-fil-A yesterday,
uh-huh.
and I was snooping 'cause these guys were having a Bible study,
Mhm.
and the student, it was obviously a very new thing, they were just starting, and the student was ridiculously hungry.
Mhm.
I mean, the teacher would, like, share something, and the guy wouldn't even hardly respond to that. He was just like, "Man, I just know that I need Jesus in my life. I just know I don't really know all this stuff. Like, I don't know a lot of Bible. I don't know this stuff, but I just know, man, I need God to change some things in my life, and I need this, whatever." And the whole conversation, the teacher's conversation was, "Here's what I'm gonna do." This is, like, almost literally what he said. "What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you this information because if you don't know this, then you can't be what God wants you to be." So what we're gonna start out with, he's hungry. He said, what we're gonna start out with is you gotta understand the Trinity. Because if you don't understand the Trinity, then you can't. So it's that. What I gotta do is I gotta get you to know all this information in order for you to be versus introduce him to the power of God. Yes, obviously the word of God is important, but this man is reaching out, craving an interaction, an encounter with God, and all you're worried about is
Yeah.
making sure he knows the right
Yeah,
things.
does he know the Apostles' Creed? Does he know the
He went
Trinity?
through the
Does he
Apostles' Creed. He went through the Apostles' Creed. This dude's talking
Unbelievable.
about, "I need Jesus to change my life," and he went through the different components of the Apostles'
See
Creed.
see that, and that's the thing, and it's funny because that kind of leads into I think we actually answered questions 3 and 4. I don't know, you might wanna just, like, reference previous comments or whatever. I'm just gonna throw those 2 questions together. Question 3 was, why do we have a tendency to try to start with the model if what we need is a movement?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I don't know, I think we mentioned that, right? Like,
Yeah.
we mentioned it's it's because we because that's what we're familiar with, because we think that eventually it'll equal that. And then question 4 is, are models and methods incongruent with creating movements, or is there a way that they can be properly leveraged? And I think you just said, models are pretty, it's going to be pretty tough for a
Yeah.
model to become a movement. Methods seem to be sort of like this fulcrum. It's the hinge point. You do need some methodology to say, because people will get frustrated and say, what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly people who've only ever been structurally associated with a model.
Well, them and people that are like kinda radical, the radical people. right? They'll get frustrated if there's not a little bit of guidance and direction. Well, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't we doing that? Why we need to be doing this? And
Yeah.
I think with, the point that you made about movements is that it can lose energy,
Mm.
right? If there's not I mean, the New Testament church was not structureless. It
Right.
it
That's it wasn't systemless, but I
correct.
believe it was modelless.
Correct. Absolutely. All their responsibility was in church leadership was how do we facilitate the movement? How do we facilitate that? And so, yes, there were some processes and some
Mm.
systems that were created that allowed people to function and operate within the movement and still allowed them to be spirit led. I think that's a big piece of it. I think that's one of the difference
Mhm.
between movements and even methods and definitely models, but even methods is how do we create an environment where people are free to be spirit led, but then also have some level of accountability that provides guidance and direction because otherwise you get into some chaos and you get into heresy,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm. So so you have to have governance,
Absolutely.
biblical governance. It's funny because it's funny because when you look in the Bible, what you find over and over is that biblical governance is the facilitation of the mission. It is either it's either the Ephesians 4 model.
Mhm.
Dude, I feel like divine wisdom coming into my my spirit right here.
Love
This
it.
is crazy. Um, the Ephesians 4 model, which is apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers for the perfecting of the saints for the work of ministry. In other words, it is the it's the input, it's the training, it's the gifting that helps grow people, advance people. So it's something that's creating a positive outcome. It's producing Christ likeness and maturity in people. On the other end of the scale, it's the Acts model where there was the Hebrew and Grecian widows and there was a dispute. And so the apostles in their governance said, it's not good for us to be taken away from prayer and from the declaration of the gospel and the word. So choose out 7 men full of the spirit, full of wisdom, and having a good report among the people so so why? So that the work isn't hindered. So on one end of the spectrum, you've got biblical governance that is being used in a way that is cultivating things that are going to positively impact the
Yes.
advancement of the kingdom. On
Yes.
the other hand, there's governance that is fixing and arbitrating and creating solutions to what would handicap our
Yeah.
ability to advance the kingdom.
Phew, that's so good.
It's like that's what biblical governance is about. It's not about being a gifted CEO of a local congregation.
Which is what the modern,
Church model.
leader. Yeah, that's the modern leader, what
Yeah.
is expected and what has produced success,
Mhm.
right? But here's the deal. This is the thing, bro. The thing about movements is, again, going back to risk tolerance
Mhm.
and understanding that movements
Mhm.
have the greatest potential for producing a multiplication movement, a multiplication. I won't use the word to define the word, but a a multiplication revival
Let
that
me let me
impacts.
hang let,
Yeah.
let me hang this question out here. This is something good. What you just said. I'm going to hang a question out here, and you can
Okay.
answer it because I'm just hitting the pause button. It's where you're going, but I want to hang a question to those that are listening. Okay, why aren't models and usually even methods incapable of producing a multiplication movement? Why are only movements capable of producing multiplication? I'm going to hang that question out there because I believe it's true.
I do.
I don't believe that there is a model.
Correct.
Now,
Correct.
okay, look, if somebody wants to go, Well, but we have a model that's built on a biblical system. Well, okay, then
That's not really a
it's
model.
I
It's
mean,
the
it's basically using the biblical model, and it's the model is New Testament church culture.
correct.
So
And
it's
the culture piece of the movement is when it becomes part of who we are, every believer, it becomes a part of us, not what we're doing and whatever. And so the power in that is you're unleashing the greatest resource, which is the
that's
human
it.
resource.
The force multiplier, right?
Yes.
You,
Yes.
in other words, let's say, for example, you have a church of 100 people. If 100 people become part of the movement, now rather than having one service or one Sunday, let's say one Sunday, one day a week at one location, you have a force multiplier of 100 people in multiple locations.
Right.
Like that in itself kind of explains it, doesn't it?
Models, so if you have everybody in their place doing their part along the assembly line, everybody's in their place, they're doing their job, you can produce a tremendous product,
Very good.
right? So you can produce a tremendous ministry. You can produce good services, good youth ministry, whatever.
And if you do it efficiently, you can do it faster and better than everyone else.
But what happens, bro? Think about this. What happens on the assembly line? People go home and they leave their job and they go home and they do the rest of their life not even thinking about the assembly line.
Yeah.
That's why models are not capable of producing a movement,
Right.
because most people have siloed what I do at church versus how
Wow.
I live my life.
Wow.
And a movement just rocks and shakes that whole paradigm that says, no, you're not a part of an assembly line that's producing a great product. It's in you. The culture, the kingdom culture, the spirit of Jesus is in you, which is a missional spirit. He's in you. So living on mission every day where you live, work, and play
So
is
true.
not a model. It's not even a method. It's a culture that's in you, and it unleashes the power. So instead of having people living on mission for, I'll be generous, 6 hours a week at church to produce a great product versus people living 24/7,
Mm,
365, spirit-led, on mission, the potential there, it far exceeds
that's
anything a model could produce.
exponentially different. Michael Hank said because models and methods don't allow the fluidity of the spirit working through, which is another. So you got the force multiplier piece, and you've got the spirit led dynamic. Like your method and model. That's a good point, right? It's not just about being a force multiplier. It's not just simply about. It's kind of like what you said. What you said almost sits between what I was talking about and what Hanks is talking about here.
Mhm.
Is that the force multiplier is 100 people everywhere they go 7 days a week. They are the movement. What Hanks is saying is that yeah, and it also can be go here, go there, talk to that person, do this.
Absolutely.
And so there's spirit fluidity in that, where methods and because here's the deal, you start going off script in a model, and
Oh,
somebody's
bro.
somebody's gonna come along and be like, hey, here, do your job.
Was that your Oklahoma accent again?
Yeah.
Do
I
your
brought
job. Stay in your place. Stay where you're supposed to be. You're
stay
not
in your
supposed to
lane,
do
man.
that,
Stay in your lane.
right?
Okay. All
But
right.
but
So
in but it but in a movement, Ken, here's the deal. The beautiful thing about a movement is people understand what you said, the Ephesians 4 model. They understand the giftings for the ministry, and they understand church governance, which is not stay in your place on the assembly line and do what you're supposed to do, but it's also understanding God has situated governance,
mhm,
and he situated gifted people in
mhm,
situations and places to be
mhm,
used in those giftings for the edification of the body,
mhm,
and you appreciate that. It's not don't do this because that's not what your job is. It's sometimes my responsibility is to be submitted in this area because this is the way God created, this is the way God it creates that safety so that I don't get led astray, so that I
mhm,
don't get in trouble, because this is the danger, right? I've often said about Korah.
mhm.
We talk a lot about Korah, right? What did Korah say? Korah said, There are men in Israel that are just as holy as you are, Moses. Who do you think you are to be the only one that can
Yeah.
hear from God?
Yeah.
And I've
Choosing
often
your family to be the priests,
Yep.
Levi. Right.
Yep. I've often said that when people started the body ministry movement that really kind of started like
Yeah.
late 90s,
Yeah.
early 2000s,
Mhm.
the body's called to minister to the body. I do think that there was a missing piece of that,
Mhm.
of people understanding how what you're talking about,
Mhm.
spiritual governance is not
Apostolic
just
apostolic authority and order
Yes.
inside that framework of body ministry. It's not just people going off and being like, you know what, you can get a word, you can get, go to prayer, give somebody a prophecy, tell them, whatever. There's got to be somebody in that process going, wait, time out.
Right, right, and Moses wasn't the leader because he was the greatest leader or because he had the most knowledge or because whatever. It was because God positioned him there. God said, "You're the man that
Hmm.
I'm gonna speak through to the people," and that's where I think we've unwittingly opened people up to a Korah spirit and a Korah mentality, and I think that has led to kind of a misunderstanding the pendulum, swinging on the pendulum, right? Like you see people body ministry and people going off and doing their own thing and not understanding apostolic structure, and then we clamp down and then we stuff or snuff out
Hmm. Yeah.
the potential and the power because it's misused.
And
What
go
we got
back
to
and
do is
reinforce models.
go back. Exactly,
Okay. So
absolutely.
So there may be people, and we're short on time. We may have people out here, maybe leaders or people listening who are still, sometimes old habits are hard to break. Sometimes, sometimes we get so invested in something that we just want what we've been invested in to work.
Hmm.
I've spent so much time,
Absolutely.
effort, and energy on it. Bless God, I'm going to make
Yeah.
it work. Okay, so this question is for them. Okay,
Yeah.
what about the person who says, "Yeah, but we see in creation that God is very ordered and he's very systematic in all that he does. Nothing's random. So, what's wrong with us trying to order or structure for outcomes in ways that mirror God's ways?"
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah. Let me take a stab at it. Do you mind?
No, go ahead.
I okay, so here's what I would say to that. I would say in the answer is between the lines. Like we talk about read between the answer is in between the lines of a lot of what we've discussed already up to this point about doing and being.
Mhm.
I think what you have to recognize is that when God orders the world, when God in creation and he's systematic and he's ordered and he's, whatever, and you're like, see, God's very systematic, God's very ordered. What's wrong with creating systematic ordered models? Here's what I probably would this is what I probably would defer to though. And that is that God does out of what he is. God
Mhm.
God does out of his state of perfection. So his ordering and his structure is the result and it's the reflection of who and what he is,
I like that.
right? On the other hand, when we structure, which I think goes back to what we talked about in the beginning about models either look at we
Yeah,
got to create a
problem.
model to fix a problem or other areas of success. I'm going
Yeah.
to reproduce that here. So when we begin to, I think when we begin to structure, it's often to try to produce something that we're not.
Mhm.
So Jesus came to cause us to become like him. So I think that's our first order of business, right? That's why we say if you want to make disciples, you have to first be the disciple. I think that goes back to the whole thing about somebody who says, well, what if we recover the biblical model and now we got a model? And it's like, okay, but now your model is, say, well, that's a system, right? But it's now you're saying our model is basically culture, which is exactly what God's model was. God said, I am that I am. His culture is himself. So God creates and he orders and he systematizes out of his perfection and out of his divine wisdom. We often order out of our desire to produce something that we're not. We're
Sure.
not doing it right. We're not getting the results we want. And so we're going to try to create this model. I think this is the reason why transformational disciple making is at the root of, I don't know, that's just how I would answer it.
No, I like that. I also think too, that systems and models for us can become what we I'm gonna say worship, but what we put our trust in and what we put our hope in, right? And, exactly what you said, like, the systems that God created were birthed out of his perfection. We're created in his image, so
Mhm,
there's gonna be some things that we do that tries to bring some order and structure into chaotic situations,
mhm.
right? Because we're created in his image, so we're naturally gonna do that. But the beautiful thing about God is that he allows kind of the creativity. I think the main thing is this, is the principles, right?
Mhm.
Like where models miss it is it's not principle based.
True.
It's function
Outcomes,
based.
outcomes.
Yeah. It principle based. Methods lean in a little more to
Mhm,
principle based, but
mhm,
when you get into movements, it has to be rooted and grounded in principles. And God established in nature some principles about how the world is going to function and how the world is going to operate. And I love what Jared Staten says. He said God told them to produce. He told them to reproduce after their kind. He told them to reproduce, but he didn't continue to produce them. He allowed the process to play out and to take place. I think what you got to look at
after
is
he put his seed in them.
he put his seed in them. Correct.
He made them in his image.
And that's where, bro, I think that's the risk. I think that's the danger of even methods and definitely models. They become, kind of like test tube
Mhm,
babies. Like we
mhm.
like producing it in a controlled environment versus what do we see happen in the New Testament church is we see, yes, God gave them some structure and God gave them governance and giftings, but it was released for them to go and to be, and
Mhm.
as they were, they did what Jesus did. They lived
After
like
their
he
kind,
lived.
after their kind is a
Exactly.
B concept.
100%.
Which by the way caused me to think about this idea that we often talk about is the fact that everything that has a seed in it has the
Correct.
capacity of reproduction and multiplication. So the question is then, man, and Chris, we could keep on going on this about, Jesus
That's a
said,
great point, bro.
yeah, it's spirit led. Like he says, as many as are led by the spirit, they're the sons of God, which is that's B language. And so, the thing about it is what happens is, you might say, yeah, but man, just letting everybody be led of the spirit is risky. Well, it's risky when people only have been framed inside understanding fitting inside the structure of a North American church model, an attractional church model. It's risky because people that they haven't been accustomed to it. We don't have the culture for it. We don't have, whatever. Okay. So, all right. Last
Can I
question.
just mention real quick,
Yeah.
the chaotic piece we talked about a while ago?
Hmm.
In God's environment, there is an element of chaos
Hmm.
that and then an element of order,
It's true.
right? And what models do is models try to remove all chaos. Chaos is
Mm,
disruptive. It's destructive. We can't have that. In
great
a
point.
movement, you understand how do we
Release the
maximize
power of the chaotic.
in a way that is ordered, that's not
Mhm,
just
mhm,
anarchy.
mhm. Yeah, because that goes back to apostolic authority and governance,
Yeah.
where the
Yep.
order is we're just simply trying to make sure that the sort of the chaotic piece of people being spirit led, and they're on Tuesday afternoon having a conversation with a coworker, and on Thursday evening meeting with a next door neighbor and a whatever, and it's not the nice, neat, tidy package of a model.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Okay.
last question.
Yeah.
Is there a Jesus model that we can uncover, recover, and follow? Is there a Jesus model, right? And
Yeah.
so that would be so watch this. So what I did there was was bring it back to redemptive. In other words, if we have a movement, then our methodology is going to be spirit led. It's going to be culture. It's going to be the people of God reflecting Him. So our model then becomes not the result, not the producer.
Yeah.
That's sort of that's a redemptive reverse. Is there a Jesus model that we can follow?
It's a great question. The obvious answer, what you referenced earlier, right? Jesus gave Peter the keys of the kingdom, and this is why we're apostolic, not just by denomination, but we try to be apostolic in everything that we do, because the model that we have is the people that spent the most time with Jesus. What did they do when Jesus was gone? And now they had to live in the same kind of context that we live in.
Mhm.
Culture was a little bit different, but the same. Jesus is
Yeah.
gone, spirit led.
Yeah.
How do we change our world? How do we reach people with the gospel? Like it
Yeah.
was all the same. And so
WWJD.
yeah, right. So the hard part becomes, how do we there's sometimes not always clarity, and there could be confusion on what really is the book of Acts model, right? Is
Yeah.
the book of Acts
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that we always fully get or understand
Right.
what the book of Acts model was really like.
Yeah.
But there were some key components. There were some principles that we can clearly
Good point.
pull out and glean from
Good
that.
point.
And here's the thing: a model will lose its relevance. At some point, a model will lose its relevance. Things will shift, things will change, whatever. The Jesus movement will remain relevant in every time, in
Yeah.
every context.
Yeah.
The principles of Jesus will remain, right? And is there a Jesus model? Absolutely. I'll put my power in you.
Yeah.
You'll be witnesses unto
Yeah.
me. You go and you make disciples.
Yep.
You go and you live on mission. And we see it all throughout the Bible of people going and living on mission, doing what Jesus called them to do, going into places that were unchurched, going into places that needed to hear the gospel, going into, paganistic cultures and like vile cities and whatever. And through the power of the Holy Ghost and living on mission, God produced a movement that turned the world upside down. Absolutely.
Wow. Man, that's so good. And when you think about, what you're saying is kind of like this the guiding principle is, Christ in you. The Bible says that the Lord working in you both to will
And
and
do.
to do
That's
according
right.
to His good pleasure.
That's right.
The will piece has to do with what you are. Like we are what we will, or you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
and so the Bible said the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit lusteth against the flesh. They're contrary to one another. So there's these core principles of like dying out to self and self abandonment, and it's no longer I that lives, but Christ living in me. And what's so sad is that people can have varying degrees of self abandonment
Mm-hmm.
and thrive in an attractional based model. People can have great giftings and not it's them living in them, not Christ,
Absolutely.
right? You can
Absolutely.
in fact, we can actually create environments where when we are looking for a model where the machine is going to be the thing, the assembly line is going to be we're going to have the factory, and the factory is going to produce church members in the factory. And so what happens is then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're looking for a few good men. We're looking for some talented individuals who are desire to make, you can work some overtime, you can move up the ladder, blah, 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 blah. And what happens is you've got people that are really gifted and they can do a lot of great things, and it doesn't necessitate self-abandonment.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do the book of Acts Jesus movement, it's going to require, it's no longer I, but Christ living in me. It's going to require the absolute mortification of the flesh.
Yes.
Because the underlying question to everything is, what would Jesus say? What would Jesus do? What would Jesus' response be there? And that's the principle. Those are the core principles. So
So good,
I
man.
think it's been an awesome
So
conversation, bro.
yeah, and I love what Jeffrey Glick said, "As modern apostolics, we're much better communicating what we believe and what we should do rather than who we are and how we should be." And I think that's really kind of the shift from models, which is what we've predominantly been built on, to a movement requires cultural shift, and it requires people to change,
Yeah.
right? Requires people to change. That shift doesn't happen easily. It doesn't happen quickly. And so that's why, sometimes it's such a challenge. So I know we went long today, but
We
man, we
did.
really, really appreciate everybody hanging with us through this, and a lot of tremendous comments.
That's it.
Yeah, a lot of great feedback.
Mike
And
Hanks.
yeah,
Mike Hanks. Hey, we want to just give a shout out to Mike Hanks. Thanks for being on here, bro. Mike Hanks has successfully come through treatment for cancer, and he was in the pulpit for the first time. It was throat and mouth, and so it's the first time he's been in the pulpit since January. And he was on here today, and he was throwing out some great
love it.
comment bombs. And so we'll give a shout out. We love Mike Hanks.
Absolutely, man. 100%. Appreciate everybody being a part of the conversation today. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope to see some folks at NAYC. Say
Yeah,
hi to us.
come say hi.
Love to
Come.
connect with you
Yeah,
100%. And we will be back next Tuesday around
unless
10 o'clock,
unless the rapture happens,
unless we have van trouble.
then we'll give we'll
Devil
do
is
our
a lie.
we'll do our podcast from the New Jerusalem next week.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So we look forward to seeing everybody next Tuesday around 10. Until then, go live mobilized. God bless.